What happens when a guest pushes a host too far on live television in front of millions of people watching at home? What happens when someone walks onto a stage thinking they own the room, only to find out that the room has rules and the man running it is not afraid to enforce them? It only took 32 seconds of pure, unfiltered chaos for everything to fall apart. 32 seconds. That is all it took for one of the most talked about moments in talk show history to unfold right before our eyes. Tonight, we are taking you back to that night. We are taking you back to the moment Greg Gutfeld sat across from his guest, smiled that calm smile of his, and watched the whole thing crumble. This is the story of what happened when Meghan Markle sat down on Greg Gutfeld's show and walked away from it in a way nobody saw coming. Let us start at the very beginning. Greg Gutfeld is a man who has been doing this for a long time. He knows how the game works. He knows how to keep things moving, how to keep things fair, and most importantly, how to keep things under control. His show is his house, and in his house there are rules. Simple ones. Respect the conversation. Listen when someone else is talking. And above all, be honest. Those are not hard rules to follow. Most people who sit in that chair understand that. Most people, anyway. Meghan Markle was not most people that night. She came onto the show with a lot of confidence. That much was clear from the moment she sat down. She had a big smile. She had big energy. And she had a lot to say. Greg greeted her the way he greets every guest. Polite, warm, professional. He leaned in, looked right at her, and said something simple to get things started. "Welcome to the show. We are really glad to have you here tonight. So let us just jump right in." A normal start. A casual opening. Nothing strange about it at all. But what happened next was anything but normal. Meghan did not wait for the first question. She did not sit back and settle in. She leaned forward, clasped her hands together, and started talking, before Greg even finished his sentence. "Thank you so much for having me. I just want to say, before we get into anything, that I think it is so important that people understand where I am coming from. Because I feel like for a long time, nobody has really let me tell my side of things. And I think that is a problem." Greg nodded. He let her finish. He smiled that calm, steady smile of his, the one that says, "I hear you. And I am still in control of this conversation." Then he responded, nice and easy. "Of course, and that is exactly why we brought you on, to hear your side. So let us start with that. Tell us what you feel people have been missing." Simple. Fair. An open door. He basically rolled out the red carpet for her to say whatever she wanted to say. And for just a moment, it looked like she might walk through it. But she did not. Instead, she looked at Greg, tilted her head just a little, and said something that made the whole room go quiet. "Well, I think the first thing people need to understand is that I have been treated very unfairly by a lot of people in this industry. And I mean a lot of people. And I think some of those people are on television right now." Greg blinked. Just once. Then he leaned back, just slightly, and kept that same calm expression on his face. He did not bite. He did not get defensive. He just kept things moving. "Okay, that is a pretty big claim. Can you be a little more specific about what you mean by that? Because we want to be fair to everyone here, including you." There it was. Greg doing exactly what a good host does. He gave her a chance to explain herself. He gave her room to breathe. He was not attacking her. He was not shutting her down. He was simply asking her to back up what she just said with something real. And that is when things started to shift. Meghan sat up a little straighter. Her smile stayed in place, but something behind her eyes changed. Something that Greg clearly noticed, because his posture shifted too, just a little, like a man who sees a storm coming and starts getting ready for it. "I think," she said, slowly, carefully, that you already know what I am talking about. I think a lot of people in this room know exactly what I am talking about. And I think it is really interesting that the question you just asked me is exactly the kind of question that keeps people like me from ever being heard. The air in the room changed. You could feel it. Greg felt it too, but he did not flinch. He did not raise his voice. He did not roll his eyes. He just sat there, steady as a rock, and responded the way only someone who has been doing this for years would respond. I understand that feeling. I really do. But here is the thing. I asked you that question because I want you to be able to make your point clearly. If you have something you want to say it. I am not here to stop you. I am here to help you say it. That was grace. That was patience. That was a man who understood that his guest was uncomfortable, and instead of making it worse, he tried to make it better. He handed her the microphone back. He said, "Go ahead. This is your moment." But Meghan did not take it. Not the way he intended. "I appreciate that," she said. "I really do. But I also think that the way this conversation is being framed right now is part of the problem. Because you are asking me to prove something, and I should not have to prove anything. My experience is valid, whether or not you or anyone else believes it." Greg paused. A short pause. The kind of pause that means someone is choosing their next words very carefully. "I am not asking you to prove anything," he said. "I am asking you to share. There is a big difference between the two. And I promise you, if you share, and this audience is going to listen." He was still being fair. He was still being kind. But you could tell, if you were watching closely, that something was starting to test his patience. Not in an angry way, more in a quiet, concerned way. Like a man who sees where this road is going and is trying very hard to steer away from it before it gets too far down the line. The problem was, Meghan was not interested in steering. She took a breath, a long one, and then she spoke again, and this time the tone was different. It was firmer, more pointed, more sure of itself. "You know what I think? I think that the reason people like you ask questions like that is because you are not used to having guests on your show who actually have something real to say. I think you are used to people coming on here and just going along with whatever you want to talk about, and I am not going to do that." The room went silent. Not the kind of silence that happens when someone says something funny. The kind of silence that happens when someone says something that nobody expected. Greg did not move for a beat. Then he uncrossed his legs, sat up straight, and looked directly at her. "Okay," he said. "That is an interesting thing to say. But let me push back on that for a second, because I think it is important. I have had thousands of guests on this show. Thousands. And I can tell you right now, some of the best moments on this program have happened when someone came on here and disagreed with me completely. I welcome that. No, what I do not welcome is someone coming on my show and telling me that I do not know how to do my job. That is a little different. It was firm, but it was not aggressive. It was the kind of pushback that a man gives when he is drawing a line. Not a line in anger, but a line in respect. A line that says, "You can disagree with me all you want, but you are not going to talk to me like that on my own show." Most guests, when they hear something like that, they back off. They smile. They nod. They say something like, "Oh no, that is not what I meant," and then they move on. The conversation goes back to normal. Everyone goes home happy. Meghan did not back off. "I think you just proved my point," she said, and she said it with a smile. A confident, unshakable smile, like she was winning an argument in her own head, and she knew it. Greg stared at her for a moment. Then he let out a small exhale through his nose. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a quiet, controlled release of air that said everything his words did not. "How did I just prove your point?" he asked. Calm, direct. No edge to it at all. "Because the moment I said something you did not like, Your first instinct was to correct me, to put me in my place. That's exactly what I was talking about. Greg shook his head, gently, not in frustration, more like someone who is watching a conversation go off the rails and is trying very hard to keep it on track. I did not put you in your place, he said. I responded to what you said. That is what a conversation is. That is what this show is. You say something, I respond. I say something, you respond. If that feels like being put in your place, and then I think we might have a problem here. There it was. The first real crack. The first moment where Greg's patience, that steady, patient calm that had carried him through everything so far, started to show just a little bit of wear. He was not angry. He was not mean. He was just being honest. And sometimes being honest is the thing that people like Meghan do not want to hear. She did not miss a beat. I just think it is really telling, she said, that you keep framing this as a conversation when what it really feels like is an interrogation. And I think the people watching right now can see that. Greg looked at the camera for just a second. A quick glance. The kind of glance that says, "Are you seeing this?" Then he looked back at her, and something in his face changed. Not a lot, just a little, but enough. "Meghan," he said, and he said it slow and clear, like he was making sure she heard every single word. "I want to be very honest with you right now, because I think you deserve that. This is not an interrogation. This has never been an interrogation. I have been sitting here for the last several minutes trying to give you space to tell your story. And every single time I have done that, you have turned it into something else. So I am going to ask you one more time, and I hope you will hear me when I say this. What is it that you actually want to say tonight?" That was it. That was the moment. That was Greg Gutfeld drawing the clearest, most honest line he could draw, without raising his voice, without being cruel, without being unfair. He was giving her one last chance, one last open door, one last invitation to just say what she came there to say and let the audience hear it. And here is the thing. Up until this point in the conversation, you could make an argument that Meghan was just being difficult. You could say, okay, she is uncomfortable. She is nervous. She is not used to being on a show like this, where someone is actually going to ask her real questions. That happens. Guests get flustered. Guests say things they do not mean. It is live television. Nobody is perfect. But Greg had just given her the easiest out in the world. He had just said, "Look, forget everything that just happened. Start fresh. Tell me what you want to say. I am listening." That is all a host can do. That is all anyone can do. Give someone the chance to speak, and then actually listen. Meghan looked at him. She looked at the camera. Sir, she looked back at him, and then she said the thing that shifted the whole energy of that room. "I think the fact that you have to ask me that question tells me everything I need to know about this show and about you." Nobody moved. You could have heard a pin drop in that studio. The kind of silence that settles over a room when everyone in it is thinking the exact same thing at the exact same time. And that thing is, did she really just say that? Greg took it in. He let it sit for a second. And then he did something that surprised a lot of people who were watching. He did not get defensive. He did not get flustered. He did not stumble over his words or fumble for a response. He just looked at her, steady and clear, and he said something that came from a place of complete honesty. "Okay," he said, "let me make sure I understand what you are saying. You are sitting on my show right now, and you are telling me that you do not trust me. Is that right?" It was a fair question, a direct one, the kind of question that puts everything right out in the open. No games, no tricks. He was not trying to trap her. He was trying to understand, and he was giving her one more chance to say, "No, that is not what I meant," to walk it back, to save face. Meghan did not walk it back. "I think trust has to be earned," she said, "and I do not think it has been earned here. Not tonight." Greg nodded, slowly, like he was processing something. Like a man who had just been given a piece of information that he was not surprised by, but that he needed to hear out loud before he could act on it. "Fair enough," he said. "I respect that. But here is my problem with that, and I say this with all the respect in the world. You came on this show. You agreed to be here. You sat down in that chair, and the entire time you have been here, you have not answered a single question I have asked you. Not one. You have talked around everything. You have made comments about the way I am running this, and you have basically told me, in about 6 different ways, that you do not think I am doing my job right. And I have sat here, and I have let you do all of that. So when you tell me that trust has not been earned, I guess my question is, why are you still sitting here?" That was the sharpest thing Greg had said all night. And it landed. You could see it land on her face. Not in a dramatic way. Not with tears or gasps or any of that. Just a small shift. A tightening around the eyes. A slight change in the way she was holding herself. The kind of thing that tells you someone has just been hit with something they were not expecting, and they are not sure what to do with it. The silence that followed was different from the ones before. The ones before had been uncomfortable. This one was heavy. This one had weight to it. This one felt like the last breath before something big was about to happen. Greg did not smile. He did not laugh. He did not shake his head. He just sat there, very still, for what felt like a long time, but was probably only a few seconds. And then he spoke, and when he did, his voice was quiet. Not angry quiet, not hurt quiet, just quiet. The kind of quiet that comes from a man who has finally heard enough. "You know what? I think you might be right about that," he said. "Because what it tells me is that you did not come here to have a conversation. You came here to have an argument, and that is fine, but you are not going to have it on my show." The room held its breath. Meghan opened her mouth. She was going to say something. You could see it in her face, the way her jaw set, the way her eyes narrowed just a fraction, the way her whole body leaned forward like she was about to fire back. But Greg was already there, already speaking, already closing the door before she could walk back through it. "I have enjoyed having you here," he said, and he said it with a nod, a real nod, the kind that means something. "But I think we have reached the end of what this conversation is going to be. And I mean that with all the respect in the world." He did not yell. He did not point. He did not make a scene. And he simply told her, with all the calm and dignity in the world, that the conversation was over. That she had pushed it to a place where it could not go any further. And that it was time to stop. Meghan sat there for a moment. Just a moment. Her smile was gone. The confidence that had been carrying her through the whole exchange was gone too. Or at least it had shifted into something else. Something harder. Something that looked less like confidence, and more like someone who had just realized that the room was not on her side. She looked around. She looked at the crew. She looked at the audience. And then she looked back at Greg, and for just a second, you could see something flicker across her face. Something that looked almost like surprise. Like she had not expected this. Like she had walked into that room expecting everyone to bend around her, and for the first time, someone had not. "Fine," she said, just that one word. Fine. Flat. No emotion behind it, or maybe too much emotion behind it to let any of it show. And then she stood up. She did not say thank you. She did not say goodbye. She did not shake his hand. She just stood up, smoothed out her jacket, and turned to leave. And as she turned, she paused. Just for a second. She looked back at Greg, one more time, like she was about to say something else, something sharp, something that would have the last word, but she did not say it. She just turned again, and she walked off that stage without looking back. The walk to the exit was not a short one. She had to cross the whole stage, past the lights, past the cameras, and past every single person in that room who had just watched the whole thing play out. And not one of them said a word to her. Not one of them reached out. Not one of them offered her a smile or a nod or anything that would have made that walk feel any less lonely. She kept her eyes forward the whole way, her back straight, her chin up, like she was still trying to hold on to something. Some version of how she wanted this night to go. Some version of herself that walked off that stage looking strong and unbothered and above it all. But everyone in that room knew the truth, and she knew it too. Greg watched her go. He sat right there in his chair, perfectly still, and watched her walk all the way to the edge of the stage. He did not move. He did not react. He just watched. And when she was gone, when she had disappeared behind that curtain, he turned back to the camera and he smiled. Not a big smile, not a cocky smile, just a small, quiet smile. The smile of a man who had done exactly what he was supposed to do and who knew it. Now, here is the thing that makes this whole thing stick in your mind long after it is over. It was not the argument that made this moment so powerful. It was not the back and forth, or the tension, or the silence. It was the way Greg handled it. Because at every single point in that conversation, he had a choice. He could have gotten angry. He could have talked over her. He could have made it loud and messy and ugly. That would have been easy. That is what most people would have done. But he did not do that. He stayed calm. He stayed fair. He stayed respectful. And because he did that, because he held his ground without losing his cool, the whole thing spoke for itself. He did not have to say a single mean thing. He did not have to attack her. He did not have to tear her down. All he did was hold the line. And she walked right into it, all on her own. Think about that for a second. Think about how much harder it is to stay calm when someone is pushing you. When someone is saying things that are not fair. When someone is trying to make you look bad on your own show, in front of your audience, in front of the whole country. Most people crack under that kind of pressure. Most people let it get to them. Greg did not let it get to him. Not even close. And that is what made Meghan's comments stand out so much. Because when you are calm, when you are steady, when you are the one who is clearly in control, the other person's words land differently. They do not sound powerful anymore. They sound desperate. They sound like someone who is throwing punches in the dark, hoping one of them will hit something. And the whole time, Greg was just standing right there, in the light, letting everyone see exactly what was happening. Meghan came onto that show thinking she was the one in control. She came in with all the confidence in the world, all the big energy, all the bold statements. She thought she was going to walk in there, say what she wanted to say, and walk out looking like the hero of the story, the brave one, the one who stood up and told the truth. But that is not what happened. What happened was that she walked into a room run by a man who was not going to let her rewrite the rules. A man who was not going to roll over. A man who was going to sit there, listen to everything she said, give her every chance in the world to make her point, and then, when she chose not to make it, when she chose to turn the whole thing into something it was never supposed to be, he simply said enough. And he said it without raising his voice, without pointing a finger, without being cruel or unfair or unkind. He just said it, quietly, clearly, and that was that. That is the part that gets people. That is the part that keeps this moment stuck in everyone's head, because it was not loud. It was not dramatic in the way that most people expect drama to be. It was quiet. It was still. And it was heavy. The kind of heavy that settles into a room and stays there long after the people have left. The show went on. It always does. But that moment, those 32 seconds at the very beginning of it all, when that spark that lit the whole thing up, that was the moment that everyone remembered. That was the moment that proved that on Greg Gutfeld's show, the rules are the rules. And if you walk onto that stage, you better know them before you sit down. Because if you do not, well, you just saw what happens. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. That is the thing about a moment like this. It does not just live on that show. It lives in your head. Long after the lights go down, long after the cameras stop rolling, that quiet little moment stays with you. Greg Gutfeld, sitting in his chair, calm as ever, watching the door close. That is the image. That is the one that stays.